Right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the final meeting of the Cabinet for 2021. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending, both in person and also those tuning in virtually. I think we all live in challenging times again at the present time. Obviously, with the spread of the Omicron variant is obviously causing quite a concern across the country. And obviously, we're taking those matters incredibly seriously here, as well as a district council. We do have quite a packed agenda today, so we'll start in terms of register of attendance, and I'll ask our Head of Democratic Services to go through the roll call, please.
Thank you, Leader. I can confirm we've had apologies for absence today from Councillor Nick Robbins and Councillor Linda Wootton. All of the members of Cabinet are present as expected.
Super, thank you very much. Therefore, moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 9th of November, and these are on pages 3 to 8. Do we have any comments or clarifications on these minutes, please? No? Then can I have a proposer for these minutes, please? Councillor Stokes and Councillor Dobson to second, and all those in favour, please. And that is unanimous by those present. Therefore, moving on to agenda item number 3, so obviously disclosure of interest. If you do have anything at any point in this meeting, then please do not hesitate to disclose at the appropriate time. Otherwise, we'll move to items for a recommendation to council, and agenda item number 4 is the localised council tax support scheme 2022 to 23, and I'll hand over to the Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Leader. So the report in front of you, every year the council is required to review their council tax support scheme to determine its sustainability and consider any potential changes for the following financial year. When the scheme came into effect on the 1st of April 2013, the council agreed to a scheme which provides 80% entitlement for working age claimants. Despite the scheme being a local council tax support scheme, due to the nature of the protection provided to pensioners and vulnerable working age customers, there will always be an element of the cost that the council has to incur and for which it has no influence over. Due to this protection from changes to pensioners and vulnerable working age customers, any savings to be made to the proposed scheme can only be applied to the working age, which is 26.12% of the caseload. This means that the current council spend of 694,118, only 169,549 can be influenced by a change to the current scheme. The scheme is determined locally by the council, having undertaken consultation with precepting authorities, key stakeholders and residents. Consultation of a no change scheme took place during October, with a total of 8,236 surveys issued, and of those 308 were returned. This is a response rate of 3.74%. All the elements of the proposed scheme were supported by over half the respondents, as detailed in paragraph 1.16 of the report and appendix 1. In addition, the major preceptors, Lincolnshire County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner were also supportive of the proposed scheme. The results of the consultation were presented to the Finance, Economic Development and Corporate Service Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 3rd of December 2021. The committee recommended the scheme as presented to Cabinet without any amendments. So to Cabinet, I'd like to propose the recommendations 1 and 2 on page 9 of the report back. Thank you, Leader.
Brilliant, thank you very much for that. And I think, we can all agree on the need for the council tax support scheme, and particularly as we continue to deal with the COVID pandemic. And I think it's absolutely right to continue with our tried and tested rate of 80% entitlement for working age claimants. And there's always going to be a challenge in providing fair and supportive rates for residents, whilst ensuring the financial sustainability of this council. However, our existing approach does work well, and I'm pleased it's extended. And the consultation process, as you've already outlined, has been successful, and there seems to be a consensus between residents, precepting authorities and local stakeholders over the continuing with the existing rates, as you've already explained. And obviously the Finance, Economic Development and Corporate Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee has also recommended the scheme without amendments. So I think it's a very positive thing for us all to agree here today. Do you have any further comments on this report? No, then if Councillor Stokes is happy to propose, then I'll second, and all those in favour, please. And that's unanimous by those present. Therefore, moving on to agenda item number 5, which is the council tax base for 2022 and 23. I'll hand back over to the Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Leader. So the report in front of you is relating to the council tax base for 22-23, And Cabinet is asked to recommend to the council tax base figure of 48,706.07 for the financial year 22-23. The setting of the tax base is an integral part of the budget setting process and establishes the level of the number of properties in the district for the 22-23 financial year. The report confirms that the tax base has increased by 1.2%, which is a positive increase when compared with only 0.4% for the previous financial year. The report provides a full breakdown at table 1 of the changes to the tax base, and there's also this also shows a positive reduction in the number of long-term empties, which is at the lowest level for the last 7 years, whilst the base has increased by over 3,000 properties for the same period. Finally, Cabinet is asked to note the proposed collection rates for 22-23, which is provisionally set at 98.75%, but this will be reviewed at the year end when we know the actual collection for the current year. So I'm asking Cabinet to, on recommendation on page 33. So I'm happy to propose that. Thank you, Leader.
No, thank you very much. And I'm also in support of the increase, which highlights the expansion of, affordable homes across the districts, and using the assumed council tax level for 2022 and now factoring in the increase in the council tax base. I can envisage an additional 94,000 in revenue, I think, from the modelling of the previous medium-term financial plan. And the increase in the tax base will, of course, help us support our residents in a variety of ways in the next financial year, particularly addressing some of the priorities that we've set as a council. Of course, we must factor in the council tax support scheme, as previously mentioned, but it is useful for us to see the next financial year and how that will look for us as a council and residents who may require that support. So no, thank you very much. And do you have any further comments on this at all? Councillor Reid, I can see you there.
Good afternoon, Leader and members. What I think often gets slightly forgotten is the collection rate, that it's the target this year is 98.75%. It's an amazing achievement by our officers that this collection rate is at this level. It's also achieved by the blend with the council tax support. And so that clearly demonstrates the fairness and the outreaching efforts that go across all of our council taxpayers in this rate being as accurate and as high as it is. And like everybody else in the room, I guess, or I'm sure, look forward to it continuing that way for next year as well, particularly with challenging times. But there is support out there, and there is extended support from other sources as well, as we know, and we as councillors must support and promote to people that have these difficulties in seeing that they are known to people to help them. Thank you.
No, thank you. Are you happy to second the report?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I will do that.
Okay, so any further speakers on this agenda item? No, then it has been proposed and seconded. So all those in favour, please. And that's unanimous by those present. And then we move on to agenda item number 6, which is the Deepings Leisure Centre options. And I'll hand over to the Cabinet Member for Leisure, please.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm pleased to be able to share an update on the options for the refurbishment of Deepings Leisure Centre following the Joint Scrutiny Committee meeting, which took place last week on the 30th of November. The members present received a copy of the report, which is before you today. The report sets out the various options which have been considered for the provision of leisure in the Deepings area. At the joint scrutiny meeting, the members present were also given the opportunity to question Paul Weston, architect, and David Rushton from the Sports and Leisure Consultancy on the work which had been undertaken. I am pleased to report that following debate at that meeting, members voted unanimously to recommend that Cabinet consider the option to fully refurbish and remodel Deepings Leisure Centre. This is option C within the report. I believe that this is an important first step in bringing the existing leisure centre back into use and providing local residents with the facilities they need and deserve. Undertaking a full refurbishment and remodelling of the current centre will provide the local area with a facility which meets the evidence need both now and in the future. This will also result in improving the leisure offer in the area, providing an enhanced level of facilities and more opportunities for residents to adopt a healthy lifestyle. Investing in high-quality leisure facilities across the district is a key part of the council's corporate ambition. Vital to us achieving this ambition is the provision of good quality facilities which meet modern customer expectation and are sustainable. However, an investment needs to be in lockstep with the council's wider priorities and financial position. As a council, we find ourselves in extremely challenging financial times. However, I remain resolute to trying to get the best possible outcome for the Deepings area, and that is why I would like to personally echo the recommendation from the Joint Scrutiny Committee. I ask today that you give your due consideration to the option to fully refurbish and remodel the existing leisure centre. I do not say this lightly, as a refurbishment of this magnitude and cost will still be a significant undertaking for this council, and any investment approved will require the council to review its spending priorities to account for the cost of borrowing. Of course, no investment will be possible without the council gaining a legal interest in the existing building, and although there has been good progress, there is still work to do in this regard. On the 2nd of September this year, we promised to turn around the options for refurbishment before Christmas and to present the options to a joint scrutiny meeting before being considered by Cabinet and a meeting of the council. We have delivered on that promise, and an extraordinary meeting of the council has now been scheduled for next week on the 14th of December to consider the views of the Cabinet. I'm looking forward to hearing the debate today and the wider views of Cabinet on the work which has been undertaken. So the recommendations are that the Cabinet note the feasibility work undertaken to establish options for leisure provision in the Deepings, and secondly, recommends to Cabinet a preferred option for leisure facilities to meet the local needs in the Deeping area. Thank you, Chair. Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. So you're happy to propose option C as a proposal? Very good, then I'm happy to second that. And I think in terms of comments from myself, so I think it is so important that the much loved Deepings Leisure Centre is reopened as soon as possible. But we must do so with confidence about the facility's long-term future. And we all know that a simple refurbishment will just not suffice, especially given our commitment to active living as set out in our sports strategy. So a full remodelling and refurbishment is necessary, but also very much wanted. And we are committed to not only return the centre to its former glory, but to also put significant investment into providing local residents with a modern complex that meets the needs of the local community much better than it has ever done before. And I know our staff, and many of which are here today, have worked tirelessly exploring various options and assessing each solution in order to get the facility back up and running as soon as possible. And now that the groundwork has been done to explore the problem and find viable solutions, we now need to press ahead to deliver the Deepings Leisure Centre 2.0. And I think the proposal for a full refurbishment is the best way forward. It makes sense to implement the ideas put forward for reconfiguring and enhancing the swimming pool, the sports hall and the squash courts, and utilising space for the gym and changing facilities. And I think I speak for us all when we all agree that it is vital to bring the leisure centre back to life, especially for the community in the south of the district, and the need for a modern and welcoming space for activities and sports groups, which are so important right now, especially with the challenges that we've all been going through for the last 2 years. And I'm happy to open to debate to Cabinet members initially. So Councillor Reid first.
Thank you very much. I listened very carefully to the dialogue that you presented, Leader. And I think in addition to that, we mustn't forget the journey of change, that of commercial and business finance, and what's actually happened with leisure centres over the period of time that this has been appraised. It seems a long time since the Mace report, and a lot of things have actually changed that have caused the journey and destiny of what we actually can manage to afford to do to have arrived where we are here today. And we have listened, and we have had a joint scrutiny review, and we know what their recommendation is. We've listened to our own group members, and indeed, most importantly, we've listened to a lot of members of the community of the South. So therefore, I shan't have any hesitation in recommending option C, because I honestly believe that that's the best facility that we can afford to deliver now at the turning of 2021. And I'll be quite comfortable to support option C. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think you've made some really interesting points then, and particularly about the investment into particularly public sector leisure centres. And I think it's important to note that even following the last 20 months, there are still some councils across this country that have not reopened their leisure centres simply because the operational costs of operating them are so significant, and particularly those with the 50-metre pools, because the running costs of those are just astronomical. You know, and I think there's various options around locally to us about councils actually making decisions to cancel their leisure improvement plans because simply they don't have the money to invest into the facilities. And there was an interesting article the other day about how over the next 10 years, I think they estimate about 2,000 leisure facilities are going to close. And that's simply because of the age of a number of facilities. And, you know, it's a massive financial burden for any organisation. And people also look for different offers now as well. You know, there's a massive private sector offer in terms of leisure and activities and that lifestyle approach. And obviously what we offer as a public sector is very different to the private sector providers in the economy as well. Do you have any further comments, Adam?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I mean, option C is basically the only real option for me that we need to take of the options that's on the table. But I mean, Councillor Dobson did mention the cost, and with regard to that, I would like to add an additional recommendation, if possible, Leader. So I'm asking Council to recommend to Council that the implications of the borrowing costs in respect of the preferred option are included in the Council's medium-term financial plan, and an affordability plan is developed to ensure financial sustainability. You two are happy to accept those. Thank you.
Yes, a very sensible recommendation to be added. We need to, as it will come up later in the agenda, balance our capital receipts and monies in the way that we deliver this project. So yes, I think this fairly sits in the medium-term financial plan. So I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to convey my thanks to the team, Karen Whitfield and Councillor Barry Dobson, for a thorough and comprehensive report. It's clear a lot of work has gone into this report, and at times been incredibly stressful for everybody concerned, including the residents. So I'm pleased to see it progressing, and I'm happy to support the proposals.
Any further comments? Councillor Baxter and then Councillor Moran.
Thank you. It was with a heavy heart that I voted. Obviously, it was unanimously voted last week, but with a heavy heart, some of us voted for the option C refurbishment, because we had been promised a new leisure centre, and up until that meeting, we believed that might be possible in the Landis Gear site, which the council had seen over a year before, and it's a shame that didn't come to anything. But having said that, what's on the paper before you is better than the prospect that was proposed to the Cabinet, I think, earlier this year, which was to close the centre forever. And I'm really pleased that that hasn't come to pass, because, as you say, swimming is very much important. Swimming and leisure is very important to the people in the Deepings who have enjoyed it in that centre for the last 47 years. You said that the centre is much loved. I disagree. It is the the idea of having a swimming pool which is fit for purpose, which is much loved, and I don't think there's much emotional attachment to that particular building, other than kind of people going there on their first date and roller skating as teenagers and so on. But I think if you replaced it with a better leisure centre somewhere else, no one would lose a tear. So the money was never there to deliver the promises of a new leisure centre. There was no commitment within the medium-term financial plan. So I welcome Councillor Stokes's proposal that this is actually put within the medium-term financial plan, so that there is some evident financial strategy to it that there wasn't with the first set of promises. I'd like to ask Councillor Dobson for progress on the lease. We were told last week that there was a meeting going to take place at the Anthem Trust and that they might get on board. I'd like to know how that meeting went and how much progress has been made towards a workable lease, because that, I think, was identified in the original report as potentially a deal breaker. Also, whether or not the other interested parties have been contacted since that meeting, including the county council, the parish council, the rugby club, and I've said the school already. Within the recommendation to the Cabinet from the Joint Overview Scrutiny Group, we said that we wanted a meaningful consultation, and I think that is absolutely crucial, because having looked at the detail of option C, there are some great things in it, but there are some things which are, in my opinion, perhaps not quite what the Deepings would want. I've been to leisure centres recently. I went to Worksop at the weekend, and I noticed that when you have a gala, you need an awful lot of space for the swimmers who are not swimming to stand about and cheer or watch or do their homework or whatever they're doing. And that is not possible, or that would be very difficult if you remove the learner pool and that space, which I think is part of the Paul Weston project. Paul Weston is, I'm sure, an outstanding expert in his field, but he is not the only person with expertise or an opinion on what should happen in the Deepings Leisure Centre. There are about 12,000 people in the Deepings who would also appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the debate, in order that we have some ownership over the leisure centre that we are given. There's an awful lot of work that needs doing by this council to restore faith within the leisure programme and within the council for those people who, many of them, feel let down. And so we need a proper, meaningful process about what is actually going to go into option C and how it is going to be done and what's going to be done. So if your recommendation from here doesn't include a meaningful consultation, then please put one in. And I'm not just talking about a 10-point survey monkey questionnaire. I'm talking about a proper, detailed consultation where people, especially the people who have used the leisure centre, the clubs, the organisations, actually get a say, which is listened to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll ask Councillor Moran to comment first.
Thank you. I wanted to echo a lot of what Ashley's just said. But at the end of the day, we are where we are. And where we are now is, as Ashley said, it's a vast improvement on the centre being closed and just being left and demolished, and we get nothing. I wanted to talk more about the consultation. As you're aware, we have quite a large Facebook group with a couple of thousand people on. What we're looking at doing is getting together the most knowledgeable people within that group, the people who have followed this discussion from the very beginning, have a complete understanding of what's gone on, and who are now looking to move forward. If we got together such a group, would there be the opportunity for that group through a spokesman? I'm not talking about lining up 20 people at every meeting to all bang on with their own little particular niggles. Would there be an opportunity, if we got this group together, for a representative of that group to be present and listen to at any meetings on what is actually put into the leisure centre? Would that be acceptable or not?
Do you want to finish your remarks and then we'll come to the answers?
That's it. I just want to know that if quite some time ago, myself and Ashley and Phil got together with every club and group that had used the leisure centre, and we had a really good meeting, and there were all sorts of things came up about how they had been using the existing leisure centre that they would have liked to have seen if and when we get a new one, because at the time it was we're going to get a new one, so we want it to. And there's one of the guys on there has just been responsible for building a no expense spared leisure centre, not a million miles from here, and we've been to have a look at it. And this guy really knows what he's talking about, and it's a fabulous. It's way more than we'd ever get or even aspire to. Some of the things are just. The lockers. I'm like, really? They need to be so fancy. But people like that they're not Joe's dad who does a bit of roofing. These are people that work in the industry all the time. And I would really like to get these people together and talk to them and get a reasonable list together of options, like the fact of losing the learner pool, the knock-on effect of that, which isn't covered by a moving floor. But I'd like to think that a representative of that group could come to the council and take part in meetings and say, look, this is what the people you represent would like. So I just want to know if that is an option that you would prepare to grant us.
I think in terms of governance, obviously no decision's been taken in how that's going to look. I think obviously you've got a campaign group, and I'm sure there are other groups of people that would also be interested in contributing to the leisure centre discussion, because it's not just for the Deepings, it is for the wider south of the district as well. So, but no decisions have been taken on that, and that obviously needs to be worked through. Obviously, there will be public meetings, which members of the public and community leaders are welcome to join and come along to and listen.
What I'm just trying to avoid is if the consultation goes the way of, yeah, okay, we'll find somewhere where we can get 50, 60 people in a room, you're going to end up just being harangued by people with their own agendas. What I'm trying to do is get it into a useful form where it's not just useful for us, but it's useful for you as well.
This is, anyway, thank you for your comments. I'll go to Councillor Dobson and then follow up with Karen if there's any points that she wished to answer.
Yeah. Thank you both. Proceedings are going very well indeed. Very confident that we're going to get this over the line within as short a time as possible, so we can get moving on the further design, layout, and build. So for the others, I think I'll just hand over quickly to Karen Whitfield, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. In terms of an update regarding the lease, we've had a series of meetings with LCC and the Anthem Trust, the latest of which was last Friday. Pleased to report some really positive progress in terms that the form has been submitted now to the Department for Education for approval for the trust to enter into a lease with this council. LCC are engaging with the DfE, and we were hoping that they would treat this as a special case and expedite it. Unfortunately, it hasn't quite met the criteria, but the DfE have agreed that there needs to be some special measures around this, and LCC have a follow-up meeting with them this Friday. So I think we've got good engagement all around, and the progress is well underway now. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So I think in terms of the recommendations that we're making today, obviously we've got recommendations which just notes the feasibility work undertaken to establish options for the leisure provision in the Deepings. And then I would propose that we use the same wording that was actually used in the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is approves option C with a budget allocation of 10.663 for leisure facilities to meet the local needs in the Deepings area, subject to meaningful community consultation and the inclusion of a financial review. Obviously, Councillor Stokes has also made an amendment, not an amendment, you've also introduced another recommendation to the recommendations for this meeting, And obviously we continue to call upon the DFE and the Anthem Trust to resolve the issue of the leases as soon as possible, which I know obviously you're both on. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to come back again. I've listened very carefully to the debate. There's one thing again that hasn't been shared, or the confidence that I certainly have, and that is that when we went to see, is it NK1, the leisure centre? Yeah, 1NK. Okay, fine. So we have, fortunately, a chief executive and 2 excellent officers that support her that have been involved in the delivery of that. And that should give us every confidence that we can deliver this and that we can deliver it of good purpose, good standard. And indeed, if there is anything along the way that particularly comes from any further thought, then I'm sure at least it could be considered. But I really think we should herald what is there at North Highcombe, and indeed think that if we could manage that level of facility for our residents in the south of the county, we'd do very well. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Reid, and I'm sure, I hope I'm speaking for all of the members of the Lincolnshire County Council in the room as well, that I hope we're all banging the drum at LCC in terms of getting a financial contribution from them for the leisure centre. So I'm sure we'll have that in your hands as well, Councillor Baxter, as well as ours. Right, so we've made the recommendations. All those in favour, please. That is unanimous. Thank you. 6A, which was the exclusion of the press and public. Obviously, as we haven't discussed the pink papers, we won't need to do that today. Therefore, we'll move on to items for the Cabinet decision, which are key, and we'll go to the asset disposal programme to support growth. And we'll go to Councillor Reid, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Well, it's quite appropriate for it to be here after just what we've been talking about. So the asset disposal programme to support growth. And growth is just where we will be with several of our projects. The recommendation Cabinet is asked to approve the sequential disposal methodology outlined in this report with regards to general fund asset disposals. Secondly, Cabinet is asked to authorise and delegate authority to the Director of Housing and Property in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Housing and Property, the Deputy Leader, the Chief Executive, and of course the Section 151 Officer and the Monitoring Officer to dispose of general fund assets up to the value of £2 million, excluding any applicable VAT, subject to legal and valuation advice. Of course, the corporate plan sets out an ambitious economic growth, and there is some challenging budgetary positions in respect to the capital financing, which requires the council, and it really does, to be innovative with its property assets to stimulate this economic activity. There are ambitions to acquire and develop key general fund capital projects that support or deliver ambitions within the corporate plan. It is key to rationalise and dispose of assets that do not directly contribute towards the corporate plan priorities or have become surplus to the requirements of the council. This approach must also financially support the council's medium-term financial plan, and it would reduce the need to borrow for capital funding expenditure. You've all heard me speak on many occasions, and I will continue to do, that this is a balancing act to support the general fund by revenues of rent collection from its assets, and also a blend of capital receipts that should balance with borrowing in a manner that we can afford for the capital programme events that we have to support. The council over recent years has adopted a clear strategy for utilising its own resources, reserves to fund the majority of its annual general fund capital programme. And the report is to outline to Cabinet the processes to ensure best value is achieved regarding the general fund land property disposal programme in order that it meets the corporate plan, as I've at risk of repeating myself, but wanting to give all members the assurance that that is its true purpose. Officers I'll get the word out of it. The officers are excavating the tasks, and all properties on the asset register are being reviewed. In fact, we're well on the way with that review, and identifying those that are strategic, operational, or of income generating performance. The assets remain with regard to the income generation, and putting into a long list of all these actions. Following this, which I've mentioned is well on its way and quite advanced in preparation, this value will be most advantageous, and it'll be the methodology used for the disposal thought. It is proposed to give officer delegation to the Director of Housing and Property for asset valued up to £2 million in consultation with myself, the Deputy Leader, the Chief Executive, the Section 151 Officer and the Monitoring Officer, as I started by the introduction of this. And of course, I would say a well-balanced group of people it is. I therefore ask Cabinet to consider and the recommendations, largely of what I've said rather than what's written down in the report and the information that's provided, and I welcome any debate before making the proposition and looking for support in it being seconded. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. I am very happy to second, and I think it is really important that we use our role as ambassadors of the local economy to not only identify general fund capital projects, but also identify those assets that simply no longer serve to benefit our residents or even local businesses. So it is right that by creating that framework for identifying such circumstances whereby the council can do more by transitioning to more beneficial projects, it supports us on numerous levels. And actually, in the interest of our residents, we must provide that governance that is fiscally prudent and responsible. And particularly, this means limited borrowing wherever possible, particularly in areas where it is avoidable. I do support this strategy. It's aimed at prioritising best value in our land and property assets. And I agree with the core principles for assessing these assets by their contribution to our local economy and community. And of course, there will be, a measured and in-depth analysis of our assets on a case-by-case basis. And I agree it is important to be commercially minded yet fair in our appraisals. And actually, we've worked quite recently with a number of town and parish councils, particularly around the assets that we have held, that we've now transitioned over to them, because quite simply, they want to have more ownership and investment in their place. So, in Stamford, we're looking at a number of assets that we own that the town council will be interested in. Obviously, when I had the property portfolio, we transferred the town hall in Deeping to Market Deeping Town Council for them to maintain. So for me, it's about getting the best facilities and the best value in terms of whoever operates some of these facilities, and actually looking at our asset list as well. So it is it's a welcomed strategy moving forwards, and I'm pleased that you've brought this to head. So I'm very happy to second. Do we have any further comments on this document? No? Then I'm very happy to second and indicate all those in favour, please. And that's unanimous by those present. And therefore we move on to the next item, which is the sport and physical activity strategy, and we'll hand over to Councillor Dobson, please.
Thank you, Leader. And I'm pleased to present this report to you today regarding the proposed sport and physical activity strategy for South Kesterman District Council. This will underpin the Corporate Plan 2020-23 priority of healthy and strong communities. This strategy sets out the district's vision, mission, aims and objectives for increasing rates of physical activity over the next 5 years. It is vital to set out how the council can positively impact the health and well-being of people in the district and reduce any barriers to people living healthy, active lifestyles. This strategy aims to help tackle the inequalities seen in participation in sport, physical activity, and in health, and provide residents and visitors to South Kesterman with opportunities to be more active more often. This means providing ways to integrate activity into the lifestyles of people in the district, not just in organised sport and physical activity, but in commuting, workplaces, and leisure activities. The sport and physical activity strategy is for the district as a whole, which includes and takes account of national and local priorities, and also supports the important work of other organisations and associations engaged in the delivery of sport and physical activity within the district. As the country continues to recover from COVID-19, this strategy will provide a platform to support people in our communities to adopt a healthy lifestyle. It sets out the mission to provide opportunities that our residents need now and in the future to build healthy and strong communities and encourage residents to live healthy, active lifestyles. The recommendation within the report is that Cabinet approves the adoption of the sport and physical activity strategy as the Council's strategic document to underpin the corporate plan 2020-2023 priority of healthy and strong communities. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Leader. I would just like to say this report is extremely well written. It covers all areas, and clearly the needs of our residents have been at the forefront in this strategy. It links to all the work that I, along with the Working Party, have been doing on the mental health challenge. The strategy document, I feel, is easy to read, identifies our issues clearly, and most importantly, it has an action plan. So that's really, really good. The equality impact analysis is excellent, one of the best I've read. Emma Sharp, I noticed the report author and lead on the strategy, and I would like to formally thank her for this excellent piece of work. And is she here? Oh, well done, Emma. Well done. And I would be delighted to second this proposal. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Mason. And likewise, you know, my thanks as well to Emma for this report, and Karen and Nicola as well, and Barry for the work that they've done. And you know, having a strategy for promoting and supporting physical health and active living across the district is so important for us as a council, and it's not only going to benefit our residents but also our local NHS services. And you know, we must commit ourselves to building healthier communities, which means addressing some of the health inequalities by providing access to sports or exercise for everyone, regardless of their income or background. And I think, you know, we all live in, and we certainly are at the minute, living in a time of high stress and anxiety, not least the effects of a global pandemic. So it's important to highlight the positive impact that exercise and fresh air have on our mental health and also our physical health too. And I know I keep trying to do more physical health because I have an incredibly sweet tooth. So anytime I can get to the gym, I do try. And I think most of us probably enjoyed, you know, a bit of walking and cycling over the lockdown as well. So, you know, really getting out and enjoying our communities. And we are so lucky as a district because we are blessed with so many open spaces and excellent public parks that, you know, we can really make the most of what we have locally by boosting our own physical and mental well-being. And with this strategy, we can not only do that, but also help reduce the risks associated with, you know, increased obesity and diabetes, as well as employing that preventative healthcare in order to reduce pressures on our local health services. So I think we'll, you know, as ever, continue to work together with other partners and stakeholders at district, county and national level in order to keep up the good progress to date so far. And I'm sure that this strategy, which is incredibly well written, so thank you, will provide that platform to support our communities to adopt a healthy lifestyle, whilst also boosting our local economy and supporting grassroots and sports and activity groups, which I know many of us have taken part in, joined and represented at, you know, local, county and national competitions. So thank you. Have any further comments from the Cabinet first? Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I welcome what is here and obviously support it. I think there's something else that is here. What we do as a district, and some of these facilities here are in the core of our non-statutory duties. And we do stride to balance being able to provide these along with our statutory functions to a balanced budget. And I know I probably come from a background that is quite different to some from Rutland, where we had real hard choices. Well, hard choices, actually, there were often not very many choices at all because we didn't have the funding available and to actually be able to support these functions or arts and leisure or anything else. So, it's really great that it's just not what a strategy is. It's something that we can continue to implement and in fact demonstrate and support our community with. And it means a great deal. Thank you.
I think you've made a really valid point there. The district council, whilst it might not be a statutory responsibility, we have huge levers and influence in our local community and on how society works in our district. So we don't want to underplay that, and we want to be an active part of it. And I think that's the point of us as a district. We need to act as that enabler to support our residents and to support our businesses and support our community groups, because ultimately, we're all here, irrespective of who we got elected for, whichever party, we're all here to improve our place and improve the opportunities that everyone has in our district. So, Councillor Baxter next.
Thank you, Chair. I think several shocking figures in this report, one of which is that 46%, almost half of children in South Kesteven are physically inactive. And that's going to contribute longer term as people grow older to an increase to the current obesity crisis and mental health care epidemic that we're suffering at the moment. If we don't do something to get the other half of children active, we're going to have real, even bigger problems than we do at the moment for the NHS, for councils and everyone else. So I welcome the work that is being done to create interesting places already, including for example, the tree planting that we've all been involved in this last week, and the aspirations for Jubilee Park, which were mentioned at Environment Committee last week. But there's so much more to do. And as a council, we can do an awful lot in terms of planning and urban design. I think probably the planning committee has got as much power over this agenda as possibly cabinet or any other committee of the council. We need to promote cycle routes. We need to promote play areas. I was disappointed that in Market Deeping recently, an area that was set aside as a play area on the original plan has now been given over to a sewerage / electricity substation with little local consultation. And that's the kind of thing that we need to look out for. So I'd like to ask the portfolio holder, how will the Cabinet be working with partners in the public sector, such as the County Council, the NHS and so on? How will the council be working with partners in the private sector, for example, employers, developers and so on? And how will the council work with partners in the voluntary sector that are getting these kids moving, like the scouts, the dance groups and so on?
Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, we will engage with all these people. Obviously, this is in the early stages. This is only a draft. And I hope we can progress this reasonably quickly and as quickly as, contact with these people permits. But surely, yes, we can't just do this on our own. We would like to engage with others as always. Thank you.
I think just on that, to expand it, I think in terms of sports engagement, there's a huge amount that, in terms of our own Leisure SK can do. But there's actually an awful lot that we can do as elected individual ward members. So, for instance, in Stamford, I'm involved in Connect Stamford, which is about creating that green wheel around Stamford for cycling, for walking. We've got representatives of some there as a district councillor. We've also got the county council involved in that. And we've got private business and landowners involved in that to try and get a joint up approach across all the bodies. What we can do as a council, whether that's installing outdoor gyms into Wyndham Park, which we've done, and continuing to invest in our parks as well to make them an attractive place for people to want to go to, and how we can do community projects, and whether that's through the community grant that we have. So I know, there's a conversation at the moment about a skate park in Grantham, and we have a very successful skate park in Stamford. Not that you'll see me on a skateboard, but there's a massive amount we can do as individual board members with the community groups at that ground level, which can then feed into how we work as a council and how we can work together on certain schemes. And I think there's never going to be a one district approach, because all the 4 market towns are so individual and so different that actually it needs to be done on a local level, led by us locally as elected members, which I know obviously Rosemary and I do in terms of going to Langtoft and looking at the playing fields there and improving the facilities, and likewise as others do in different towns and villages across the district. But Councillor Mason?
Yeah, I just want to say to Councillor Baxter that in the action plan I have read that there's several different areas in there that's going to be taken forward. So that might answer your questions if you want to have a look at the action plan. And of course, with the work that we do with the Mental Health Working Party as well, we can take on board some of those areas and help the portfolio holder and his team.
Just to expand on that, we've declared a climate emergency in this area, and therefore we need to be doing more to promote cycling and walking and less fossil fuel transport in terms of how we get around the district. And particularly, I think the point about planning is really pinnacle, actually, because if we want to make our communities much better and easier to get around, and particularly if you look at the future growth in Stamford, so obviously on Stamford North, we need to make that integrated into the town so it encourages people not to jump in their car, to drive less than a mile. Similarly with Grantham, and I know I had a meeting with Roy from the Grantham Cycling Group, and about how we can link up Grantham in terms of getting from the southern quadrant to Belton House down off to Beaver Castle along the canal, really start to encourage that green tourism agenda as well. And that's something that we can all look to lead, and it might be a piece of work actually for one of our overview and scrutiny committee meetings in terms of how we can support that agenda as well. So, Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much. Of course, there's many ways in which this is being delivered, and it sort of keeps your mind sort of very active. And one of the things that we've been doing is to move the special expense areas to our town councils and our parish councils, those that are involved. Indeed, with an aspiration that they are probably better run and maybe more economically, but they're also owned in their own localities. And since you bring up the mention of the word skateboard parks, then that never will allow me, or indeed I'm absolutely sure every single Bourne Town councillor, for the support that the district council has given to enable us to be able to use external funds, particularly from Sport England. And we are now delivering a skateboard in Bourne. And without that partnershiping support, we wouldn't have got there. So there's many ways in which this strategy can actually be delivered and rolled out. And it's just a good opportunity to perhaps say thank you very much for the support on behalf of the district.
That's it. It's not a top-down approach. It's about working with that community, and obviously we forward funded, I think it was £60,000 into Bourne in order to get that skate park delivered, and it'll be. So no, that's what I mean. We've forward funded it, haven't we? Or loaned it, whichever way you want to describe it. But we've supported them in order to get that delivered. So it's a place for younger people to go and exercise and socialise as well, ultimately. Okay, so it has been proposed and seconded. So therefore, the recommendation is on page 209. All those in favour, please. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Therefore, moving on to the items for information, and we go to if there is any key and non-key decisions that were taken. Therefore, we've gone to agenda item number 10, which is the Cabinet Forward Plan. Do you have any comments on the forward plan at all? No? Well, that is just for noting. Therefore, sorry, Councillor Reid.
Well, none other than the forward plan, particularly for January, looks as if we're going to have a very busy time. Thank you.
I'm sure you'll enjoy a nice Christmas break before you come back to work then, Robert. Which actually leads me on to, can I wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of the officers of South Kesterman District Council for the work that they have undertaken this year. It has been incredibly challenging. And I know you've all stepped up to the mark in terms of that work. So on behalf of the Cabinet, I'd like to thank you all for the contribution that you've made into making the council an even better place to live, work and visit, obviously led by our Chief Executive. So thank you. And I know we couldn't do this without your support. So thank you very much. I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. So thank you.